Captain Dae-hyun stood on the bridge of the Horizon's Promise, watching the stars drift past the view screen. He had served in Earth's diplomatic fleet for 20 years, and in all that time he had never fired a weapon in anger. That was something he took pride in. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council 70 years ago, and they had earned their place not through conquest, but through wisdom and skill. The ship hummed quietly around him as his crew worked at their stations. Lieutenant Taiwan monitored the tactical displays, though there was rarely anything to see. Dr. Hana was in the medical bay, reviewing reports from the Valari research station. Jiwoo, the youngest member of the crew, sat at the communications console, her fingers dancing across the controls as she managed the constant flow of messages between Earth and the outer colonies. Dae-hyun smiled. This was the life he had chosen: peace, cooperation, building bridges between species that had once been strangers to each other. The Valari had become humanity's closest friends among the stars. They were an aquatic species, gentle and philosophical, who lived on floating cities above the endless oceans of their homeworld. Their planet, Valor Prime, was beautiful beyond words. Dae-hyun had visited it 3 times, and each time he had been struck by the grace of their civilization. The Valari had no weapons, no armies. They believed that intelligence and compassion were the highest virtues any species could possess. When humanity first met the Valari, it had been a moment of pure joy for both species. The Valari had shared their advanced medical knowledge freely, helping humans cure diseases that had plagued them for centuries. In return, humanity had helped the Valari develop shield technology to protect their fragile cities from the violent solar storms that sometimes swept across their world. It was friendship in its purest form. No exploitation, no hidden agendas. Just 2 species helping each other become better. Dr. Hana emerged from the medical bay, her face troubled. She walked over to Dae-hyun and handed him a data pad. "Captain, I just received a message from my colleague on the Valari research station. They're worried." Dae-hyun frowned as he read the report. "The Kryn Empire?" Hana nodded. "Their fleets have been moving closer to Valari space. Elder Surin sent a formal complaint to the Galactic Council, but nothing has been done about it. The Kryn were an insectoid species, their bodies covered in hard black shells, their eyes cold and multifaceted. They had joined the Council 40 years ago, but they had never truly embraced its principles of peace and cooperation. The Kryn believed in strength above all else. They saw kindness as weakness and diplomacy as a waste of time. Dae-hyun had met Kryn diplomats before. They were arrogant and dismissive, especially toward species they considered soft. The Valari, with their love of art and philosophy, were exactly the kind of species the Kryn despised. "I'll send a message to Earth Command," Dae-hyun said. "We need to keep an eye on this situation." 3 days later, Dae-hyun found himself in a council chamber, watching as Ambassador Kyung-soo argued with the Kryn representative. The chamber was a massive circular room with representatives from dozens of species seated in rising tiers. At the center, a holographic display showed the current map of known space. Elder Surin, the Valari representative, spoke in his soft, melodious voice. "We ask only for assurance that our borders will be respected. We have no military, no weapons. We trust in the Council to protect us." The Kryn ambassador, a massive creature named Vex, clicked his mandibles in what might have been laughter. The weak always hide behind others. "Perhaps if your species learned to defend itself, you would not need to beg for protection." Ambassador Kyung-soo stood, his voice firm. "The purpose of this council is to ensure that species can live without fear. The Valari have contributed immensely to our collective knowledge. Their medical research alone has saved billions of lives across dozens of worlds. They deserve our protection." Vex's multiple eyes fixed on Kyung-soo. "Humanity speaks of protection, yet you yourselves maintain warships. You build weapons and train soldiers. Why should the Valari not do the same?" "Because they choose not to," Kyung-soo replied. "That is their right, just as it is our right to maintain defensive capabilities. The difference is that we use our strength to protect, not to threaten." Vex stood, his massive form towering over the other representatives. "The Kryn Empire grows tired of this council's weakness. You speak of cooperation, but you enforce nothing. You speak of justice, but you have no strength. Perhaps it is time for the strong to remind the galaxy of reality." With that, Vex and his entourage walked out of the chamber. The room fell silent. Dae-hyun felt a chill run down his spine. That had not been empty rhetoric. That had been a warning. Back on the Horizon's Promise, Taiwan pulled up tactical displays showing Kryn fleet movements.
Captain, look at this.
Over the past 2 weeks, the Kryn have moved 17 battle groups into position near the Valari sector. They're not just posturing. This is a pre-invasion formation. Dae-hyun stared at the display, his mind racing. Send this to Earth Command immediately. Mark it urgent. Jiwoo looked up from her console, her face pale. Captain, I'm receiving reports from other ships in the area. The Kryn are jamming communications near Valar Prime. Nothing is getting through. When did this start? Dae-hyun demanded. 20 minutes ago. Dae-hyun's blood ran cold. Communication jamming was a precursor to military action. Everyone knew that. Get me Earth Command. Now. But the response from Earth Command was not what he wanted to hear. Due to Council protocols, they could not move forces into the area without formal authorization. That authorization required a vote by the Council Security Committee. That vote would take at least 3 days. 3 days. Dae-hyun wanted to scream. He wanted to order his ship to Valar Prime immediately. But the Horizon's Promise was a diplomatic vessel, not a warship. It had defensive shields and point defense systems, but nothing that could stand against a Kryn battle group. Dr. Hana stood beside him, her hands gripping the railing. My friends are on that research station, Dae-hyun. We have to do something. I know, he said quietly. I know. That night, Dae-hyun couldn't sleep. He lay in his quarters staring at the ceiling, thinking about Elder Surin and his people. The Valari had trusted the Council to protect them. They had believed that their friendship with humanity would keep them safe. They had spent their lives creating beauty and advancing knowledge, never imagining that someone might want to destroy them simply for being peaceful. Jiwoo's voice came over the intercom, breaking into his thoughts. Captain, you need to come to the bridge. We're detecting massive energy signatures near Valar Prime. Dae-hyun was running before she finished speaking. He burst onto the bridge in his sleep clothes, his heart pounding. What is it? Taewon's face was white. Captain, 300 Kryn warships just dropped out of hyperspace around Valar Prime. They're surrounding the planet. The view screen showed the distant star system, magnified by the ship's sensors. Even from light years away, they could see the dark shapes of the Kryn fleet forming a perfect sphere around the beautiful blue world. Get me Elder Surin, Dae-hyun ordered. Get me anyone on Valar Prime. Jiwoo's fingers flew across her console. Then she looked up, tears streaming down her face. Captain, I'm receiving distress signals. Hundreds of them. The Valari are calling for help. And then, as they watched in horror, the first orbital bombardment began. Brilliant flashes of light erupted across the view screen as Kryn weapons struck the floating cities below. Each flash represented thousands of lives ended in an instant. Dae-hyun gripped the command chair so hard his knuckles turned white. Set course for Valar Prime, maximum speed. Captain, we're 3 hours away, Taewon said. Even at maximum speed, 3 hours. It might as well have been forever. The slaughter had begun. The 3 hours it took to reach Valar Prime were the longest of Dae-hyun's life. Every minute felt like an eternity, as they listened to the desperate transmissions coming from the dying world. The Valari were not warriors. They had no evacuation protocols, no military defenses, no way to fight back. All they could do was call for help that would not arrive in time. Jiwoo sat at her station with tears running down her face, but she never stopped working. She recorded everything. Every transmission, every plea, every final goodbye. Someone had to bear witness to what was happening. Someone had to remember. One transmission came through clearer than the others. It was from a Valari mother and her child, hiding in the lower levels of one of the floating cities. The woman's voice was calm, trying not to frighten her child, even as the sounds of destruction echoed around them. It's going to be okay, little one, she said softly. Help is coming. The humans are our friends. They will come. Then there was a bright flash on the audio feed and the transmission ended. Dr. Hana collapsed into her chair, her hands covering her face. She had spent 5 years working with the Valari, learning from them, sharing meals with them, considering them friends. Now they were dying, and there was nothing she could do to save them. Taewon monitored the tactical display with growing horror. The Kryn were not trying to conquer Valar Prime. They were not taking prisoners or demanding surrender. They were systematically destroying every structure, every city, every life. This was not war. This was extermination. Captain, Taewon said, his voice hollow. They're broadcasting what they're doing. The Kryn are transmitting footage of the attack across all channels. They want everyone to see this, Daehyun understood immediately. This was a message. The Kryn were showing the galaxy what happened to weak species. They were demonstrating their power and their cruelty, daring anyone to stop them. Where are the council forces? Daehyun demanded. Jiwoo checked her console. Still waiting for authorization. The security committee is in session, but they can't agree on a response. Some members are calling for economic sanctions. Others want to send a diplomatic mission. Diplomatic mission, Daehyun repeated, his voice bitter. They're watching a genocide happen in real time, and they want to send diplomats. The Horizon's Promise finally dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Valari system. What they saw made everyone on the bridge fall silent. The beautiful blue planet was scarred with massive burn marks where the floating cities had been. Debris filled the orbital space, thousands of pieces of metal and plastic that had once been homes, schools, hospitals. Bodies floated among the wreckage, their graceful forms twisted and broken. The Kryn fleet was still there, systematically hunting down the few escape pods that had managed to launch. Daehyun watched in rage as Kryn fighters pursued an unarmed civilian vessel, destroying it with casual efficiency. They're not even letting them escape, Hana whispered. They're killing everyone, Daehyun stood. Take us closer. I want to find survivors. Captain, the Kryn will see us, Taewon warned. I don't care. We're not leaving until we've searched for survivors. The Horizon's Promise moved slowly through the debris field. The ship's sensors scanned constantly, looking for any sign of life. For an hour, they found nothing but death. Then Jiwoo's console beeped. Captain, I'm detecting a faint life sign. There's an escape pod, heavily damaged, drifting near what used to be the research station. Bring it aboard, Daehyun ordered immediately. The pod was pulled into the cargo bay, and Dr. Hana rushed down with her medical team. Daehyun followed, his heart pounding. When they opened the pod, they found 13 Velari inside. 12 were children, no more than younglings, their large eyes wide with terror. The 13th was Elder Surin. The old Velari was badly injured, his breathing labored. Burns covered his body, and Hana immediately began treating him. The children huddled together, making soft keening sounds that broke everyone's hearts. Elder Surin opened his eyes and looked at Daehyun. You came, he whispered. But you are too late. I'm sorry, Daehyun said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm so sorry. We tried to get here faster. Surin reached out with a trembling hand, touching Daehyun's arm. Where were you? Where was the council? We called for help. We trusted you. The words hit Daehyun like physical blows. The council was debating. They couldn't agree on authorization to send forces. By the time they decided, it was too late. Debating, Surin repeated softly. My people died while they debated. He coughed, and Hana frantically worked to stabilize him. These children are all that remain. 12 children from a population of billions. Daehyun looked at the younglings. They were orphans now, the last survivors of an entire civilization. We'll protect them. I swear to you, Elder Surin, we will protect them. Will you? Surin asked. Or will you debate while others die? Before Daehyun could respond, Taewon's voice came over the intercom.
Captain, you need to see this.
The Kryn are leaving. They've finished their work. Back on the bridge, they watched as the Kryn fleet prepared to depart. But before they left, they did one final thing. They deployed dozens of broadcast beacons throughout the system. Each beacon transmitted the same message over and over, showing footage of the massacre. The footage showed Kryn soldiers walking through the ruins of the floating cities, executing any Velari they found. It showed children running in terror before being cut down. It showed the beautiful underwater gardens being destroyed, the art galleries being burned, the libraries being reduced to ash. And through it all, the voice of Supreme Commander Vex narrated coldly. Let this be a lesson to all weak species. The galaxy belongs to the strong. Those who cannot defend themselves do not deserve to exist. The Velari chose weakness. This is the price of that choice. The message ended with coordinates for the beacon network. The Kryn wanted everyone to see this. They wanted every peaceful species in the galaxy to know what awaited them if they did not submit. Jiwoo looked at Daehyun, her face pale. Captain, this footage is spreading across the entire galactic network. Every world with a receiver is getting this message. Within hours, the footage reached Earth. It spread through every city, every colony, every station. Humans watched in horror as their closest friends were slaughtered. They saw the children they had played with, The scientists they had worked with, the artists who had created such beauty, all murdered without mercy. The reaction was immediate and volcanic. People poured into the streets by the millions, not to protest, not to debate, but to demand action. The anger was unlike anything humanity had experienced since the resource wars a century ago. Dae-hyun received a transmission from Earth Command. It was Admiral Sora, a legendary fleet commander who had retired 20 years ago. She looked older now, her hair gray, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "Captain Dae-hyun," she said, "I'm coming out of retirement. So are a lot of others. The United Earth Parliament has issued a declaration of war against the Kryn Empire. We're mobilizing the fleets. Admiral, the Galactic Council hasn't authorized military action," Dae-hyun said carefully. Sora's expression hardened. "We're not asking for permission. The Valari were our friends. They trusted us to protect them, and we failed. That failure ends now. Earth is going to war, council approval or not." Behind Sora, Dae-hyun could see massive shipyards coming to life. Vessels that had been mothballed for decades were being recommissioned. Weapons factories were retooling. The entire industrial might of humanity was turning toward one purpose. Ambassador Kyung-soo appeared on another channel, broadcasting from the emergency session of Parliament. His face was grim, his voice steady. "They killed our friends. They murdered children. They did this to show the galaxy that mercy is weakness. They wanted to demonstrate that peaceful species deserve extinction. They will learn what happens when you mistake humanity's kindness for helplessness. They will learn that we chose peace not because we were weak, but because we understood the cost of war. They have reminded us of that cost. Now we will teach them." The entire Parliament voted unanimously. For the first time in 70 years, humanity was going to war. On the horizon's promise, Dr. Hana sat with the 12 Valari children, trying to comfort them. They did not understand why their parents were gone, why their world was destroyed, why the sky had fallen. All they knew was that they were alone. Elder Surin died that night, his injuries too severe even for human medicine. His last words were to Dae-hyun. "Make them pay, not for revenge but for justice. Make sure no other species suffers what my people suffered." Dae-hyun held the old Valari's hand as he passed. "I swear it. On my life I swear it." The massacre at Valar Prime had ended. But humanity's response was only beginning. The transformation of humanity happened almost overnight. Within 48 hours of the Valar Prime massacre, Earth and all its colonies shifted into full wartime production. Orbital shipyards that had spent decades building, civilian transports and research vessels suddenly rang with the sound of weapons being mounted and armor being welded. Admiral Sora stood in the command center of Earth's primary military station, watching the organized chaos around her. She had spent 20 peaceful years in retirement, thinking she would never see war again. She had been wrong. Beside her stood thousands of other veterans, men and women who had fought in humanity's last major conflict. They had put away their uniforms, started families, built peaceful lives. Now they wore their uniforms again, their faces grim but determined. "How long until the first fleet is ready?" Sora asked her chief of staff. 12 days, Admiral. The ships are being pulled from storage and crewed as we speak. The 2nd through 5th fleets will be ready within 3 weeks. Sora nodded. The museum fleets, as people called them, were not actually museums. They were fully maintained warships that humanity had kept in reserve just in case. Every ship was equipped with the latest technology. Every weapons system was functional. Humanity had hoped never to use them again, but they had never stopped preparing. And the volunteers? Over 20 million in the first day alone, Admiral. We're having to turn people away. Everyone wants to fight, Sora understood. The footage from Valar Prime had affected every human who saw it. The Valari had been friends, trading partners, research colleagues, neighbors. Humans had visited their world, swam in their oceans, learned from their philosophers. And now they were gone, wiped out by an enemy who saw their peacefulness as something to be destroyed. Captain Dae-hyun, now promoted to Commodore, entered the command center. He looked exhausted, having spent the past week caring for the 12 Valari orphans and coordinating with Earth's military. Sora gestured him over. "Commodore, I'm giving you command of Battle Group 7. Your mission is to strike hard and fast at Kryn military installations. Show them that humanity is not like the other council species." Dae-hyun straightened. "Understood, Admiral. What are our rules of engagement?" "Every target gets a 5-minute evacuation warning. We're not murderers. But after those 5 minutes, anything military-related becomes rubble. The Kryn need to understand that they've awakened something they cannot defeat. Across the solar system, factories that had produced consumer goods for generations retooled their assembly lines. Food processors became ammunition plants. Electronics manufacturers started producing guidance systems for missiles. Entertainment systems were converted into military communication networks. The civilian population worked around the clock, driven by a shared purpose. They had seen what happened when peaceful species relied only on diplomacy. They had watched their friends die while bureaucrats debated. That would never happen again. Dr. Hana, who had spent her entire career saving lives, found herself in an intelligence center analyzing Kryn biology for weaknesses. It felt wrong to use her medical knowledge this way, but she understood the necessity. The Kryn had made themselves into enemies. Now humanity needed every advantage. Their respiratory system is vulnerable to certain chemical compounds, she reported to the Tactical Planning Division. Not enough to kill them, but enough to disorient them in combat. We can use this in ground operations. Lieutenant Taiwan, now Major Taiwan, led the Tactical Planning Division. He had spent years running peaceful simulations, planning escort missions and diplomatic security. Now he planned something very different: how to dismantle an empire. The Kryn have 17 major military installations, he explained to the assembled fleet commanders. They're used to fighting weaker species, so their defenses are optimized for overwhelming local forces, not defending against peer-level attack. We can exploit that. Jiwoo had become the voice of humanity's war effort. Her broadcasts reached every human colony, every ship, every station. She reported on the fleet's preparations, interviewed soldiers, and kept the memory of the Valari alive. She made sure no one forgot why they were fighting. 1 month after Valar Prime, Admiral Sora assembled the fleet commanders for a briefing. The room was filled with officers, both veteran and newly promoted, all wearing expressions of grim determination. The Galactic Council has asked us to stand down, Sora said. They want to handle this through economic sanctions and diplomatic pressure. I told them no. A murmur ran through the room. The Council had its chance to prevent this massacre. They debated while the Valari died. They're still debating while other peaceful species live in fear. We will not repeat their mistakes. Earth is going to war, and we will not stop until the Kryn Empire is dismantled and its leaders face justice. She activated a holographic display showing the Kryn Empire. We have 3 objectives. First, destroy their military capability. Second, capture their leadership. Third, ensure they never threaten another peaceful species again. This is not about revenge. This is about making sure Valar Prime never happens again. The fleet commanders nodded. They understood the difference. This was not a war of conquest or hatred. This was a war of justice and protection. Some species have offered to join us, Sora continued, but I've declined most of their assistance. This is humanity's debt to pay. The Valari were our friends and we failed to protect them. We will make that right. Commodore Daehyun spoke up. Admiral, the Kryn have been monitoring our preparations. They're aware we're mobilizing. What's their response? Sora smiled coldly. They're laughing at us. Their intelligence suggests they believe our single battle group near Valar Prime was our entire military force. They think we're all talk and no substance. They're about to learn otherwise. 3 days later, Commodore Daehyun led his battle group to the Kryn mining colony at Vectar Station. It was a massive installation, extracting rare minerals from an asteroid field and processing them for military use. The station was defended by a fleet of 12 warships and automated defense platforms. Daehyun's battle group consisted of 8 human vessels. By traditional Council military doctrine, this was an even match. But humanity did not fight by Council doctrine. Open a channel to the station, Daehyun ordered. The Kryn commander appeared on screen, his mandibles clicking in amusement. A human fleet? Have you come to negotiate? To beg us to stop? This is Commodore Daehyun of the United Earth Forces. You have 5 minutes to evacuate all civilian personnel from Vectar Station. After 5 minutes, we will open fire and destroy the station completely. This is your only warning, the Kryn commander laughed. 5 minutes? You dare threaten the Kryn Empire? We will crush your pathetic ships and send your bodies back to Earth as a message. 4 minutes and 30 seconds, Daehyun said calmly. The Kryn fleet moved to attack formation, confident in their numerical advantage. They had fought dozens of battles against Council species, always emerging victorious. They expected the humans to flee or surrender once they realized they were outmatched. Instead, the human ships spread out in a formation the Kryn had never seen before. When the 5 minutes expired, Daehyun gave the order. All ships fire. What happened next shocked the Kryn. The human weapons were not like council weapons. They did not fire energy beams that could be dispersed by shields. They fired solid projectiles, kinetic rounds traveling at relativistic speeds. The Kryn shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against solid metal moving at a significant fraction of light speed. 3 Kryn warships were destroyed in the first salvo. The others scattered, trying to understand what was happening. Their return fire was ineffective. Their energy weapons absorbed easily by the human ships' specialized shields. Major Taewon's tactical innovations proved devastatingly effective. The human ships moved in coordinated patterns, each covering the others, creating overlapping fields of fire. The Kryn, used to fighting enemies who followed predictable council tactics, could not adapt quickly enough. Within 20 minutes, the entire Kryn defense fleet was destroyed. The mining station, now defenseless, was given one more warning. Most of the civilian workers evacuated. Then the human fleet methodically reduced the station to debris. Daehyun broadcast the entire battle across all channels, just as the Kryn had broadcast the Velar Prime massacre. He wanted everyone to see this. This is humanity's message to the Kryn Empire. You showed no mercy at Velar Prime. You gave no warnings. You killed children and civilians without hesitation. We are better than you. We gave you 5 minutes. We allowed civilians to escape. But make no mistake, every military installation you have will be destroyed. Every warship you possess will be reduced to wreckage. You wanted to show the galaxy the price of weakness. We will show you the price of cruelty. The broadcast spread across the galaxy within hours. Species that had cowered in fear of the Kryn suddenly saw hope. The mighty Kryn Empire, which had seemed unstoppable, had just lost an entire fleet to a single human battle group. And that battle group was just the beginning. Behind it, 15 full battle fleets were preparing to launch. Each fleet was larger than the entire Kryn military. Each fleet was equipped with weapons and tactics the Kryn had never encountered. 3 months after Velar Prime, Admiral Sora stood on the bridge of the Unbroken Promise, watching as 15 human battle fleets assembled in formation. Each fleet consisted of over 50 warships, thousands of support vessels, and hundreds of fighter squadrons. It was the largest military force humanity had assembled in over a century. The Kryn Empire, for all their arrogance, had never faced anything like this. Their entire military consisted of perhaps 800 warships spread across 24 systems. Humanity had just deployed over 750 warships in a single location, and they had more in reserve. All fleets report ready, Admiral, her chief of staff announced. Sora nodded. Begin Operation Righteous Fury. Execute the plan. Across Kryn space, 17 military installations were about to have a very bad day. The operation was coordinated down to the second. Each fleet had been assigned specific targets, with precise timing to prevent the Kryn from reinforcing any location. Humanity had learned the lessons of Earth's ancient military history well. Strike everywhere at once, give the enemy no time to respond, overwhelm them completely. Commodore Daehyun's battle group was assigned to the Kryn Military Academy at Tornax. It was where the Kryn trained their officers and developed their tactical doctrine. Intelligence suggested over 10,000 military personnel were stationed there, along with a defensive fleet of 20 warships. His battle group dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system and immediately began broadcasting evacuation warnings. The Kryn commander, a veteran named Krell, responded with predictable aggression. You dare attack a Kryn military installation? We will destroy you and mount your bodies on our walls. You have 5 minutes to evacuate all non-combat personnel, Daehyun replied calmly. After that, we will destroy the facility. This is your only warning. Krell laughed and ordered his fleet to attack. The Kryn warships charged forward, expecting the humans to either flee or engage in traditional ship-to-ship combat. Instead, Major Taewon's tactical plan unfolded perfectly. The human ships split into 3 groups, each moving in a different direction. The Kryn, confused, split their forces to pursue. It was exactly what Taewon had predicted they would do. The human ships led the Kryn fleet on a chase through the asteroid field surrounding the system. The Kryn, overconfident, followed. They did not notice the mines that human ships had deployed until it was too late. Explosions ripped through the Kryn formation. Ships collided with asteroids as they tried to avoid the blasts. The human fleet then turned and engaged, their kinetic weapons punching through Kryn shields with devastating efficiency. Within an hour, the entire Kryn defensive fleet was destroyed. The military academy, now defenseless, received its final warning. Most of the non-combat personnel evacuated. Then human ships methodically destroyed every military building, every training facility, every weapons depot. Dae-hyun made sure to record everything. He broadcasted on the same channels the Kryn had used to broadcast the Valor Prime massacre. He wanted them to see their mighty empire crumbling. Across Kryn space, similar scenes played out. Human fleets struck mining operations, shipyards, weapons factories, and command centers. The Kryn, used to fighting weaker opponents, found themselves completely overwhelmed by humanity's coordinated assault. The battle at the Vraxis shipyards was particularly devastating for the Kryn. The shipyards were their primary construction facility, capable of building 5 warships simultaneously. The defensive fleet there consisted of 32 ships, the largest concentration of Kryn military power outside their home system. The human fleet that attacked Vraxis was commanded by Rear Admiral Shin, a veteran of the Resource Wars. He had fought in the asteroid belt conflicts and knew how to conduct 3-dimensional space warfare. Better than almost anyone, the Kryn fleet formed a defensive sphere around the shipyards, exactly as their doctrine required. Shin smiled when he saw it. Doctrine was predictable, and predictability was weakness. His fleet divided into 5 separate groups, approaching from different angles. The Kryn, forced to spread their forces, could not concentrate their fire effectively. The human ships used their superior maneuvering capabilities to avoid the energy weapons while launching kinetic strikes from unexpected angles. It was not even close to a fair fight. The human fleet was larger, better coordinated, and equipped with weapons the Kryn could not defend against. Within 3 hours, the Kryn defensive fleet was destroyed, and the shipyards were reduced to wreckage. Dr. Hana, working with military intelligence, had identified something crucial about the Kryn command structure. Their communications network relied on a series of relay stations positioned throughout their territory. If those relays were destroyed, the Kryn High Command would lose contact with their scattered forces. Specialized human strike teams, small and fast, targeted these relay stations simultaneously. Within a single day, the Kryn Empire's military communications network was crippled. Their forces could no longer coordinate, could not call for reinforcement, could not even report what was happening. Jiwoo broadcast updates after each victory, making sure the entire galaxy saw what was happening. The mighty Kryn Empire, which had seemed unstoppable just months ago, was being systematically dismantled by a species they had dismissed as weak diplomats. But the Kryn were not done yet. In desperation, Supreme Commander Vex authorized the use of biological weapons. If the humans wanted war, the Kryn would show them what real horror looked like. A Kryn strike. Force managed to reach the human colony world of New Sol. They deployed a bioweapon designed to kill any carbon-based life form within hours of exposure. The Kryn expected mass casualties and human panic. Instead, they got a demonstration of why underestimating humanity was fatal. The Valari had taught humans their advanced medical techniques. Those techniques included rapid analysis and treatment of unknown pathogens. Within hours of the bioweapons deployment, human medical teams had identified it, synthesized a cure, and distributed it to the entire colony. Total human casualties: 47 deaths, all in the initial exposure before the cure was developed. The Kryn strike force, having stayed to observe the effects of their weapon, was caught by human defense forces. Not a single Kryn ship escaped. Dae-hyun personally delivered the message to the Kryn High Command. You tried to use biological weapons against us. You failed. The Valari taught us medicine that saved our people. In trying to hurt us, you reminded us why we're fighting. Every attack you make only strengthens our resolve. The failed bioweapon attack had another effect. Several council species that had been neutral finally condemned the Kryn openly. Even species that feared human military power admitted that the Kryn had crossed every line imaginable. But Admiral Sora was not satisfied with just destroying Kryn military installations. The objective was not just to win the war, but to ensure justice was served. That meant capturing the leaders responsible for the Valar Prime massacre, especially Supreme Commander Vex. Dr. Hana's intelligence network, now spread throughout Kryn space, finally located him. Vex was commanding his personal fleet from his flagship, the Eternal Victory. He was currently moving to secure a supply route that intelligence suggested was vulnerable. The intelligence was false. Daehyun had leaked it personally, knowing Vex would take the bait. The Kryn commander had grown increasingly desperate as his empire collapsed around him. He would jump at any chance to strike back at humanity. The trap was set in the Corvin Nebula, a region of space filled with dense gas clouds that interfered with sensors. The Kryn fleet would have to navigate carefully through the nebula to reach the supply route. Vex's fleet consisted of 43 warships, including his flagship. It was a formidable force by any standard, but when they entered the Corvin Nebula, they found something terrifying waiting for them. Admiral Sora's entire battle fleet was positioned throughout the nebula, using the gas clouds for cover. Over 150 human warships surrounded the Kryn force from all directions. Vex realized his mistake immediately, but it was too late. The human fleet emerged from the clouds like ghosts, their weapons already charged. Supreme Commander Vex, Admiral Sora's voice echoed through the void. You are surrounded. Your fleet is outnumbered 3-1. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields, and your own shields are useless against our weapons. You have two choices, surrender or die. Vex's response was defiant. The Kryn do not surrender. We will fight to the last ship. I was hoping you would say that, Sora replied. The battle that followed was less of a fight and more of an execution. The human fleet had trained for this moment, practiced the tactics, refined the coordination. Each ship knew its role, knew where to be, knew when to fire. Major Taewan's tactical planning had reached a level of precision that seemed almost artistic. Human ships danced through the nebula, appearing and disappearing from the gas clouds, striking and retreating before the Kryn could respond. Fighter squadrons, launched from carriers hidden in the clouds, harassed the Kryn ships from all angles. One by one, Kryn vessels were disabled or destroyed. Vex tried to flee, but Commodore Daehyun personally led a strike wing to intercept his flagship. They did not destroy it. The tribunal was held not on Earth, not on any human world, but in orbit above Valar Prime. Admiral Sora had insisted on this location. The Kryn leaders would face justice while looking down at the world they had destroyed. A massive space station had been constructed specifically for this purpose. Its courtroom was open to observers from every species in the galaxy. Hundreds of ships gathered around the station, their crews watching the proceedings on screens. This trial would be broadcast across known space, ensuring everyone could witness what happened when genocide was committed. Supreme Commander Vex and 17 of his senior officers sat in the defendant's section, surrounded by human guards. Vex's mandibles clicked constantly, his multiple eyes surveying the room with undisguised contempt. Even now, facing judgment, he showed no remorse. The judges were selected from multiple species, including humans, to ensure fairness. The chief judge was a human named Myung, a respected legal scholar who had spent 40 years studying interspecies law. On the first day of the trial, the 12 Valari orphans were brought into the courtroom. They were older now, having spent months in human care learning human languages and customs. But they still bore the scars of that terrible day when their world died. Elder Surin's recorded testimony was played for the court. His dying words, asking why the council had failed to protect his people, brought tears to many observers. Then came the footage that the Kryn themselves had broadcast, showing the systematic destruction of the Valari civilization. The courtroom fell silent as the images played. Floating cities being destroyed, families being torn apart, children running in terror before being killed, the beauty of Valari Prime being reduced to ash and ruin, and through it all Vex's voice, narrating coldly about the necessity of destroying weak species. When the footage ended, Judge Myung addressed the defendants. Supreme Commander Vex, you stand accused of genocide. How do you plead? Vex stood, his massive form imposing even in chains. I plead nothing. The Kryn do not recognize this court's authority. The Valari were weak. They had no military, no defenses, no will to fight. They were a waste of resources in space. We did what nature itself would have done eventually. The strong survive. The weak perish. This is the way of the universe. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Even other Kryn in attendance looked uncomfortable. Vex's words were damning himself. You feel no remorse? Judge Myung asked. Remorse? For removing a useless species from the galaxy? No. My only regret is that I underestimated the humans. I did not realize you had the strength to back up your words. That was my mistake. But it does not make the destruction of the Valari wrong. Dr. Hana stood to testify next. She spoke about the Valari's contributions to galactic medicine, about the countless lives saved by their research, about their art and philosophy that had enriched every species they encountered. She spoke about her friends who had died on the research station, about the children who would never grow up, about a culture that had been erased from existence. The Valari were not weak, Hana said, her voice shaking with emotion. They were peaceful. There is a difference. They chose not to build weapons because they believed intelligence and compassion were superior to violence. They were wrong about one thing, though. They believed that others would respect that choice. They believed the galaxy was civilized enough to protect the peaceful. We failed them in that belief. Commodore Dae-hyun testified about the failed council response, about the bureaucracy that had delayed action while billions died. He presented evidence showing that the Kryn had deliberately timed their attack to exploit council procedures, knowing it would take days for any military response to be authorized. This was not an impulsive act of war, Dae-hyun explained. This was calculated genocide, planned and executed with full knowledge that the Valari had no defenses, and that council forces would not arrive in time. The Kryn leadership knew exactly what they were doing. For 2 weeks, evidence was presented. Survivors testified. Experts analyzed the attack. Military records were examined. Through it all, Vex remained defiant, showing no remorse, no recognition that he had done anything wrong. Finally, the judges retired to deliberate. They returned 3 days later with their verdict. Supreme Commander Vex and his senior officers are found guilty of genocide, crimes against peace, and crimes against sentient life. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. The massacre at Valar Prime was not an act of war but an act of extermination, carried out with full knowledge and intent. The courtroom erupted in noise. Vex simply clicked his mandibles, unmoved. Judge Myung continued. The question now is sentencing. The prosecution has asked for execution. The defense has argued for imprisonment. This court must decide. Admiral Sora was called to present humanity's position. She stood before the judges, her uniform crisp, her expression grave. We fought this war to stop the Kryn from committing more atrocities. We fought to protect other peaceful species from suffering the Valari's fate. We fought for justice, not revenge. If we execute Vex and his officers, we become executioners. We become no better than them. A shocked murmur ran through the courtroom. Many had expected humanity to demand blood. Sora continued. But neither can we simply imprison them in comfort. They must understand the weight of what they have done. Therefore, I propose this. Let them spend their lives maintaining a memorial to every Valari they killed. Let them work every day to honor the memory of those they destroyed. Let them face constantly the reality of their crimes. Dr. Hana stood and added her voice. We must be better than our enemies. If we kill them, we prove them right that strength and violence are all that matter. If we show mercy, even to those who showed none, we prove that civilization and compassion are not weakness but our greatest strengths. Jiwoo, speaking as the voice of humanity, delivered the final argument. The Valari believed in the power of education and redemption. Even now, even after what was done to them, we should honor their beliefs. Let the Kryn leaders learn what they destroyed. Let them see every day the cost of their cruelty. The judges deliberated again. When they returned, Judge Myung announced the sentence. Vex and his officers are sentenced to life imprisonment. They will be held at a facility constructed above Valar Prime, within sight of the world they destroyed. They will spend their lives maintaining the memorial to the Valari, cataloging every life lost, preserving the memory of the civilization they attempted to erase. They will have time to understand what they have done. Whether they learn from it is up to them. Vex was led away, still defiant, still unrepentant. But as he passed the 12 Valari orphans, one of them, a young female named Lyra, spoke to him in her soft musical voice. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because hate only creates more hate. The humans taught me this. I hope someday you understand what you destroyed. Vex said nothing, but something flickered in his multiple eyes. Perhaps it was the beginning of understanding, or perhaps it was nothing. Time would tell. The Kryn Empire was dismantled completely. Their territory was divided among several council species, with strict monitoring to ensure they could never rebuild their military. The civilian Kryn government, freed from the militaristic leadership, requested Earth's help in rebuilding their society along peaceful lines. Humanity agreed, but with conditions. Total demilitarization. Reparations to be paid to the Velari survivors over the next century. Educational programs about the genocide, ensuring future Kryn generations would know what their leaders had done. And permanent monitoring by council peacekeepers. The 12 Velari orphans were adopted by human families across Earth and its colonies. They learned human languages and customs while preserving their own culture. Humanity made sure they never forgot where they came from, who their people had been, what had been lost. 1 year after Velar Prime, a memorial was unveiled in orbit above the dead world. It consisted of millions of lights, each one representing a Velari life lost. At night, the memorial could be seen from the planet's surface. A constellation of artificial stars honoring the dead. Admiral Sora attended the ceremony, along with the Velari survivors and representatives from dozens of species. She was older now, ready to retire again, this time for good. But first, she had one more duty. "We gather here to remember," she said, her voice carried across the system. "We remember the Velari who believed in peace and compassion. We remember how they were murdered for that belief. We remember how we failed to protect them, and we promise that such a failure will never happen again." The Galactic Council had been reformed after the war. Humanity had insisted on changes, and for once the Council had listened. The new Velari Accords established that any genocide or attack on civilian populations would trigger immediate military response from all member species. No more debates. No more delays. The peaceful would be protected by the strong. Earth established the Guardian Fleet, a permanent rapid response force dedicated to protecting vulnerable species. Other species contributed ships and personnel, inspired by humanity's example. The fleet's flagship was named Elder Surin, honoring the Velari leader who had died, asking why help had not come. Commodore De Hyun, now promoted to admiral, commanded the Guardian Fleet.